Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Would you like to settle down and we can begin right away? Okay, the topic for this session is Towards SAFTA, Only Give and No Take. And I have with me a very distinguished panel, Ambassador Salman Bashir, the High Commissioner Salman Bashir, the High Commissioner of Pakistan to India, and Ambassador Parthasarathi, who has been a former High Commissioner to Pakistan and is a very well-known commentator on foreign affairs right now. I intend to look at this session really, in a sense, as a continuation of the previous one. And although that looked at the politics of India and whether regionalism sort of triumphed the center, here I'd like to ask both my panelists to look at the politics of India and of the neighborhood, and to perhaps look at this politics as perhaps an extension of each other. So if we look at the South Asian region, or SAFTA, if we look at it as a whole, I think it would be really interesting to see the linkages between India and its neighbors. India and Pakistan, of course. If you look at the states of Punjab and Haryana and Jammu and Kashmir, the states that are contiguous to Pakistan. In the east, you have West Bengal and Bangladesh. In the south, there's a maritime boundary between Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and Sri Lanka, and of course the Maldives as well. And in the north, there's Nepal, and the states of Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Bhutan, and Nepal. So in a sense, I'd like both my panelists to look at the subcontinent, perhaps as an integrated whole, and ask each other and challenge you, the audience, and ask each other, why is it that we are not able to move our politics in the direction of and pave the way for a greater economic integration? We know that the borders are sealed. They have been sealed since 1947 and subsequently since 1971. But I'm wondering if India, if the Indian subcontinent, and India being the largest country in the subcontinent, can perhaps do much more with its neighbors so that the neighbors respond in kind and in spirit. That's question number one. Question number two, which is the headline of this session, is that has India done quite a bit already in the 10 years that the free trade area and the SAARC space been around? And is it now time for these neighbors to also reciprocate? Or is it that the neighborhood is primarily looking at their participation in the SAARC space more in terms of rights and privileges and is not willing to accept these responsibilities? I think I'll conclude my remarks here and ask High Commissioner Bashir if you'd like to start, sir. Perhaps we'll just do brief opening comments and then a more sort of a discussion. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Jyoti. I think the way you put it is quite appropriate. We have to look at this South Asian scenario primarily, not only the context of what you said, the center vis-a-vis the states, the role of the states, that has been a topic of discussion here as it is in Pakistan. I think all of us as democracies are sort of working that out. Of course, yesterday Rahul talked of the people's power and unleashing of the people's power. I think that also makes a lot of sense. So the point is, why are we not able to, whether as communities, in districts, in provinces, in states, as nations, been able to do it? Why is it that South Asia, and you take the geographical expanse of South Asia, remains the most backward, with abject poverty, with pathetic social indicators? There must be some reason for that. Is it politics? Is it culture? Is it genetics? Is it that we are doomed by whatever fate to suffer? there must be, I think, a dispassionate, as they say, the journey inward in terms of South Asia. First of all, do we really believe in South Asia? In an age of globalization, where Pakistan is trying to position itself in the world community, and so is India, so is Bangladesh, and so are other neighbors, do we have a sense of collective identity? These are all valid questions. But unless we are able to answer these questions, I think we will be where we are in the context of what we call South Asia. Now, at the leadership level, many, many decades ago, all leaders of South Asia pledged themselves and the states, to work the vision of a progressive future for the peoples of this region. I believe SAARC has made progress. I think it's important not to lose sight of the ideals and the vision of SAARC. It is perhaps time to invest more into that collective vision as we position ourselves and work ourselves in our bilateral or regional arrangements, whether it is with East Asia or the West Asia or with Europe, with other parts of the world. So my basically sense is that, of course, it's said that Pakistan-India relations have been a function in the evolution of SAARC, and that it is that component that has held SAARC back. But I must say that in my own experience, we were absolutely clear. We did not at all allow the state of Pakistan-India bilateral relations to affect the processes of SAARC.
But why is it then, High Commissioner, that Pakistan's relationship with Bangladesh, for example, is a weak one? Why is it that your relationship with Afghanistan? I mean, obviously you have political issues. With Sri Lanka, with Bhutan, you don't have very much of a relationship with Bhutan, with Nepal, and Sri Lanka, I know you do have a good one. But why is it that you're unable to get out of the India-Pakistan paradigm?
I think that is a point of view, and you are entitled to that point of view, but I think we have had very sound, very good principle-based relations with all of our partners in South Asia, especially the ones that you mentioned, whether it is Sri Lanka or Bangladesh or Bhutan. I think it is not only, in the context of SAARC, we have a sound relationship, and we aspire to have such relationships developed across the board with other regions. Our focus has been, of course, on South Asia, but equally so in the West Asia, whether it is Central Asia, of which the Shanghai Cooperation, the Economic Cooperation Organization. So regional cooperation, first of all, let me just put it this way. Pakistan has a clear, distinct sense of its Asian identity. We are part of the greater Asian region, and we have sort of reached out to East Asia, to the SCO, to the ECO, to the GCC, as we have to our partners in the West, for that matter. And this has been translated into at several planes. Whether it is anti-terrorism, we have scores of cooperation agreements on combating terrorism or collaboration, so-called homeland security. Two, on trade, the concept of bilateral FTAs, or bilateral partnerships, comprehensive economic partnership arrangements. We have been very mindful of that, and we've been working that. And on SAFTA, let me just sort of add that Pakistan believes that SAFTA is a useful instrument, that we must all fulfill our commitments to see the tariffs liberalization program proceed ahead. And of course, there is the other aspect to it, because the topic was SAFTA, so I thought I'll add that. And that is what is called trade facilitation. Mm-hmm. And that is an area that requires very constant attention, because without that facilitation, unfortunately, all the liberalization that happened at the technical level will not bear fruit. So Pakistan actually is strongly supportive of the SAFTA concept, of the SAARC concept, and in fact, what I could say, SAFTA Plus is something that we should all endeavor.
Thank you. Ambassador Parthasarathy, can I ask you to look at South Asia perhaps as an economic whole? What if 1947 hadn't happened? Of course it has, and therefore we have to live with, and we are living with all the multiple sort of the countries that there are in our neighborhood. But do you think A, it's feasible, and B, it's right for the neighborhood to look at itself as an integrated whole, as an integrated economic whole, shall we say? And I know you're interested in East Asia and perhaps connecting this region with the larger world. So I'm hoping that you will paint us a wider canvas.
Thanks. Well, can you hear me behind? Is my mic okay?
Have you put it on?
This ain't working. Thanks. Sorry, I'm not generally given to being speechless for such a long period of time. But look, I think I look at what is our neighborhood. I think we should get this clear. And I think the first time it was defined was by Mr. Vajpayee in 2001. And he defined the Indian neighborhood, strategic neighborhood, as extending from the Straits of Hormuz, which is across the Gulf, to our west, to the Straits of Malacca to our east. And what has been the most interesting theme subsequently, and I really regard as the biggest success of Indian diplomacy in the last 20 years, has been putting this into place. Because I think what is good is Dr. Manmohan Singh immediately followed up by saying, yes, our strategic neighborhood extends from Hormuz to Malacca, and now to what we call as the Indo-Pacific, because 44% of our trade goes through Malacca, if you exclude petroleum, goes through Malacca to the Pacific coasts and to East Asia. Now, what is therefore important, and I think what we have achieved, so I'm not given to understating what we have achieved. Firstly, there was a period when we were not a trading nation. We took pride in import substitution. And a Malaysian told me that India had the unique distinction of producing a car, the Ambassador, where every part made a noise except the horn. Now, things have moved on as we globalize. And I think the entire Indian policy is geared towards ensuring security and trade promotion, economic promotion, from our western frontiers in the Straits of Hormuz, from where we get 70% of our oil and energy requirements, to Malacca across East Asia, which is the fastest growing economic region in the world. I'll give you a little figure. When you talk of SAARC, what are you talking of? We have an overall trade of $750 billion. Out of that, if you take our neighborhood to the east, then with ASEAN, where our trade was negligible, it has grown from 5 to around $70 billion in 2012. That is the rapid rate of increase of integrating with a fast-growing region. To the west, you'd be surprised, which is our largest export market in the world? United States? No. United Arab Emirates? Yes. So, when we talk of economic integration, SAARC is a minuscule part of a wider process. The only thing we have in common is a historical past under British colonialism, and maybe historical links beyond. But the reality is that in hard economic terms, this is our economic zone. And the most successful part of it has been that you have today negotiated to your east a free trade agreement with the entire group of 11 ASEAN countries. That has been expanded into a comprehensive economic cooperation agreement, including free trade in services. You have moved beyond for comprehensive economic cooperation agreements with Japan and South Korea. So when, Jyoti, you talk of economic, no, let me finish. I know you always interrupt. When we talk of this, let's look at this in perspective. SAARC also has moved. It followed a document in 1997 called SAARC Vision Beyond the Year 2000. The Indian authors were two, Muchkund Dubey and Pai Panandikar. From Pakistan, we had Foreign Secretary Niaz Naik and the others. They came out with an action plan and on what SAARC should be by the year 2020. And the action plan was that you move towards a free trade area to start with by 2010, a customs union by 2015, an economic union by 2020, and Mr. Vajpayee in one of his moments of looking ahead said, beyond that, a monetary union by 2030. Now, what has happened is SAARC has moved in the first direction. Also what we have done, as I'll be honest with the Pakistani High Commissioner here, in case SAARC does not move because of India-Pakistan differences, we have to have another alternative within South Asia. And everybody ignores that because everybody sitting in Delhi looks only westwards. But if you go to the northeastern states of India, what they are looking at is an organization called BIMSTEC. How many of you have heard of it?
So, Partha,
just a minute. Bangladesh, India, Myanmar, Sri Lanka. So what we are doing is moving on a free trade towards our east. We have a long-term objective, so I do not agree with any thesis that we don't have a long-term objective. We have an agreed long-term objective of moving in this direction.
So can I interrupt you here, Partha, to ask you, so are you saying then that India is straining at the leash of SAARC, that the bilateral disputes within SAARC, especially between India and Pakistan, is holding India back, and India does not, we think of ourselves as a rising regional economic power, and therefore would like to create linkages, jump over SAARC, and perhaps create linkages with the ASEAN economies, with the BIMSTEC, with the Bay of Bengal community. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm just saying, look, I don't like this business of rising. Growing at 4.7% of GDP as we are growing today, I would hold my horses till we set our own economy in order. No, but the fact of the matter is that in diplomacy, you always keep options open. I would love to see SAARC go ahead. I would love to see SAARC vision beyond the year 2000 implemented. But if it isn't, no big deal. I have other options open.
Ambassador Bashir, what do you think? Do you think that India's perhaps leaving SAARC behind? And how do you feel as a SAARC nation?
Jyoti, I'll be very clear to you. I have attended several of the SAARC events and meetings and standing committees and ministerials and been at the summits. And I know how much of a ceremonial that is there.
Institution it is.
Yeah, an event that sort of takes 1 week. So it could be more, and we've been saying that it would be more like business-like events in SAARC. But that is the culture, that's the history, the tradition of SAARC. But let me be very clear on this. I think Pakistan has been of the point of view that all members of SAARC, as Parthasati has just said, they have options. They are all trying to benefit nationally in this age of globalization. So if India is in talks with the European Union for a free trade agreement, if you've concluded partnerships and FTAs with Southeast Asia, good. I think everybody is doing that. Since at global plane this has not worked, so the emphasis has been, okay, let's go bilateral or with regions. Right, but what I'm trying to say here is that, I mean, that option is available and that is being exercised by everybody, including Pakistan. The question basically is, do we or will we allow ourselves nationally, individually, and collectively in this region to remain in a state of delusion?
Can I say that the accusation against Pakistan and some others, but since you're Pakistan's representative here, therefore I won't talk about the other countries, is that you're much more willing to be critical of India because it's the largest country in the region, and you're not willing to, that your investment in SAARC isn't commensurate with your demands of SAARC and of India, for example.
I don't think that's the case. Let me be very plain.
And that you're not pulling your weight in SAARC.
No, I mean, we think it is a collaborative endeavor of equals. That SAARC does not mean that all roads lead to Delhi. The fact is that over the past few years, you have seen a lot of interest on the part of the rest of the world. There is the category observers now. The Japanese, the Russians, the Japanese even, brought in some money as a SAARC fund. The Chinese are there, the others, the European Union. They take us much more seriously than we take ourselves. That's the irony of it.
So are you
because
saying that
they see the potential of this region.
And you're saying that India and the rest of SAARC doesn't take you as seriously as the European Union?
No, I'm not talking of Pakistan. I'm talking of SAARC.
Of SAARC, okay.
Yeah, the concept behind it. So I think if one were to take that argument that our strategic interests extend from this to this point, and therefore the rest in between doesn't matter, fine. That is a national or a perspective, right? I think in today's world, our interests are sort of go the full circle around the globe. So the question basically for discussion was, what about SAFTA and what about SAARC? And that's where I think we ought to focus. I will not take Partha Saab's comments as meaning that India is no longer as inclined to SAARC as is stated by the Indian leadership. I think we owe it to ourselves that we sort of revisit this concept and bring in that requisite political will to make it happen. Pakistan has demonstrated that repeatedly. The concept of the energy ring in SAARC was brought in by Pakistan in 2004 at the Islamabad summit. We have contributed in terms of concepts, in terms of...
So why is it then SAARC, it's been 10 years of the free trade agreement, next year it will be 10 years. SAARC was launched in 1985. Why is it that SAARC hasn't made any headway?
Yeah, that brings us to the actual state of affairs, which is pathetic.
No, so
right.
Why
for
do
instance,
you think? If you could briefly, what do you think?
For instance, if there are not enough communication links, if our cell phones don't function if we cross our frontiers, if there are no banking facilities, if businessmen from each other's countries require to report to the police, if there are all sort of barriers, psychological and regulatory and what we call tariff and non-tariff and para-tariff barriers, if there is no positive sentiment, then unfortunately that is what I mean, there is no political will.
Okay. Thank you, High Commissioner. I'm going to now open this discussion to the floor. Questions to, please, would you like to identify yourself and also to who you want to ask the question?
I'm Deep Kapuria, Chairman of High Tech Gears. The question to the High Commissioner of Pakistan, being rightly has been defined that we're all part of now a global system. We all see that what has happened to the WTO, the development round of Doha has literally floundered, and thus we are being pushed to regional and bilateral trade agreements. In this, the geopolitical compulsions have been very clearly defined by Mr. Partha Sarthi in a very eloquent way, to define that unless there is a security issue which is taken care of, which is the primary issue of the state or the citizen, plus the boundaries, plus food and now also the cybersecurity. So the question is to the High Commissioner of Pakistan, that does India feature anywhere in terms of their geopolitical compulsion, and thus can the track to be taken faster and the ambitious plan which has been taken for moving forward the trade? We have bilaterally, in the bilateral issue, we have actually already accorded unilaterally the MFN status, which is yet to be forthcoming from Pakistan. So how do you view China versus India relationship in all this trade aspect? Where, so
Thank
that's...
you.
Well, China-India relations, if they go...
So you have a couple of questions there. You have the MFN question and you have the China question vis-a-vis SAARC. Am I correct?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, of course, sovereign nations, sovereign decisions. We applaud the developments in China-India relations. We also applaud, better relations between this country and other countries of the world. And as far as the point about how does India, factor in our regional or our political calculations, I think the fact is that India is a big neighbor, contiguous neighbor, so it is a reality, as Pakistan is a reality, and therefore we need to find a way to sort of have normal relations, which I would like to say, in fact, more than normal relations, good relations, cooperative relations. On the MFN that you mentioned, I would like to sort of reiterate that over the past year plus, there have been good interaction between our respective commerce ministries. There is a roadmap. Pakistan is committed to trade normalization with India, and I believe that is taking place gradually. The question is one of pace. I think we all have our internal political compulsions, as we have in Pakistan, on the stage of elections now, and elections probably coming due in India next year. So, but, we would like this to move at a faster pace, but we have to sort of be patient and keep a firm grip on the steering wheel so that we don't go wrong.
Actually, may I ask Ambassador Partha Sarthi to also take that question? But before you do that, Partha, I think it's fair to say that the MFN talks between India and Pakistan were going really well. And now that over the last 6 to 8 months, Pakistan has gotten itself into a pre-election and now into a proper election scenario, it's only fair to sort of say that Pakistan is, that's why MFN has slipped in a sense. But I think once you have a new government post May 11th, I think the MFN talks will pick up speed. Partha.
You see, I'm a firm believer in market forces. Whatever happens or not, I've lived long enough in Karachi to know what we don't export because there are restrictions. Your Pakistani counterparts are as smarter or smarter than you are. It comes via Dubai or it comes via Colombo. So to me, purely in terms of trade, whether MFN comes or does not come, theek hai. I have one basic problem. I don't think India should be pushing MFN as though it's a matter of life or death. Frankly, it does not matter. The day Pakistan wants to have normal economic relations, we'll have it. But let's move at a pace which Pakistan wants to move.
No, but so the question is, Partha, should India open up irrespective of any reciprocal obligations.
We opened up MFN in 1996.
No. The question is that India has given advantages, privileges to the least developing countries of South Asia.
I'll answer that.
Okay. Except Pakistan. I think that's the only country that's left.
If the High Commissioner will feel highly insulted if you call Pakistan a least developed country. Let's be very clear. Bangladesh, Bhutan and Nepal qualified to be least developed countries. We are obliged under the WTO to give them certain concessions. As far as I am concerned, I have serious reservations of giving Pakistan or China or anybody else anything more than is required under the MFN unless we are a part of a free trade agreement or a comprehensive economic cooperation. Okay. So all I am saying is that don't push. MFN every morning Hafiz Mohammed Saeed says, Hindustan sabse pasandida mulk, for God's sake. I mean, you have to understand the politics and the dynamics in the other country and don't push trade. I would urge my friends in business, अगर आपको पाकिस्तानियों के साथ बिजनेस करना है तो दुबई या कोलंबो में कीजिए. That's how business is done. Now, and the other point is, you get around problems. I agree with the High Commissioner. Look, Pakistan is a member of the ECO. It has its own look-west policies. Fine. I'm not going to jump with sorrow that we are not a member of the ECO. We are not contiguous. So, let us be real in this world. Move at a pace with neighbors with which they are comfortable. Having said that, I think we have been less than generous in our free trade provisions with Colombo and with Dhaka, because the restrictions we have imposed, which are totally unnecessary and unfair. So, yes, they are comfortable with it. Mr. Rajapaksa is not screaming because of a trade deficit with India. If they are comfortable with it, we live with it. But within South Asia, move at a pace with which others are comfortable. When SAARC was formed, I had a foreign secretary who was very wise. And he told me, in dealing with the rest of our South Asian neighbors, let suggestions come from them. Don't be pushing your own agenda. You're then seen as being negative.
Okay, I'm going to take one last question. Actually, we've completely run out of time, but if we can take one last question. General Mehta?
My question is for His Excellency Salman Bashir.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, I'm Ashok Mehta. My question relates to the FTA, Afghanistan-Pakistan Trade Treaty Agreement. Firstly, what is the status of that, and what is the possibility of it being extended to India in the near future?
We have, Mr. Mehta, we have had a transit trade agreement with Afghanistan for years. We entered into a new agreement year before last. It's working, under which Pakistan is providing transit facilities for Afghan goods and vice versa. So I don't think there's any issue. All countries of the world can utilize the transit corridor through Pakistani ports for shipments to Afghanistan.
But why would you not allow Indian goods to use those very Afghan trucks to go back to Pakistan, to go back to Afghanistan?
I think under the FTA, there is no such discrimination between the goods from a particular source. FTA provides for certain facilities to Afghanistan to ensure that the trade to Afghanistan is facilitated from the Pakistani ports to the Afghan border.
Jyoti, may I add to what the High Commissioner said? Look, there is no problem in Afghanistan's imports coming to India. It comes by that route. There are problems in Indian exports going to Afghanistan. It's led to serious problems for us. For example, we have supplied 1.5 million tons of wheat to Afghanistan. much of which goes to school children there in the form of high-protein biscuits. And we've had to transport it through Bandar Abbas. Now, Bandar Abbas is okay if your goods are destined for the Caspian Sea and for Russia and so on, that's a fine port, and also for certain parts of Central Asia. So Pakistan's point is that right now their roads are not, transportation network is not geared to take the additional traffic from India. So again I say, all right, if that's what Pakistan wants, we're developing the Chabahar port, and the Iranians are now completing that road to near Zaranj. So always I say, if you want to do business, there are alternatives. If somebody has a problem, I don't believe in pushing people to getting it done. Fine, inshallah, a day will come when things will move, and we'll go along. So Jyoti, I'm afraid, I'm quite happy with the way SAARC has moved. I've just come back some time ago from Colombo, and they are justifiably hopping mad with us on other issues, but I don't think they're hopping mad with us on trade.
On this note then, if there are no other questions, I think I'm going to close the session. On a somewhat pessimistic note, I would think. I think the idea of South Asia is one whose time has come, but unfortunately, none of the neighbors have the kind of trust or the political will to move towards each other, to perhaps leave their inhibitions behind, and to reach out across the subcontinent and say, let's live together for each of us and for our children for tomorrow. Thank you so much for listening to us, Ambassador High Commissioner Salman Bashir, Ambassador of Pakistan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. May I request Mr. Sunil Munjalji to come up and present mementos to each of our distinguished panelists, starting with Mr. Parthasarathy. Thank you very much, Mr. Parthasarathy, for being here, Mr. Salman Bashir, and to Ms. Jyoti Malhotra for also moderating the session. Thank you. Friends, we break for tea, a short tea break.